Hey everyone, welcome back to Dating Decoded. I'm Jake.
And I'm Mia. And today we're diving into, well, this is going to be interesting, Jake. We're talking about the psychology behind why some women enjoy breath play during sex.
Yeah, so choking during sex, basically. And before anyone gets uncomfortable, we're approaching this from a purely psychological research perspective. The data we found is honestly pretty surprising.
Super surprising. Like, I knew it was a thing, but the numbers, Jake, tell them the Bed Bible survey results because I literally had to double check this.
Right? So Bed Bible did this survey in 2025 of 2,000 sexually active adults, and get this, 58% of women reported enjoying choking during sex. That's up from 49% in 2023, so it's increasing.
Nearly 6 out of 10 women. Like, that's not some tiny niche thing. That's mainstream at this point. And the reasons they gave are fascinating. 72% said it increased intensity, 65% liked the submission thrill, and 54% mentioned the endorphin rush.
And Cosmopolitan's poll backed this up. They surveyed 1,500 women and found 62% enjoy light choking for what they called erotic tension. 40% preferred moderate pressure for the whole dominant submission dynamic. Okay, so let's break down the psychology here, because this isn't just, random. There are actual neurochemical things happening. Mia, you read about the dopamine stuff, right?
But wait, Jake, before we dive into the neurochemical stuff, I think we need to talk about what these numbers actually mean. Like, when we say 58% of women enjoy this, we're talking about a massive cultural shift that's happened basically in one generation.
Absolutely. Think about it. Studies from the 1990s barely mention this at all. The Kinsey reports from the 2000s showed maybe 15 to 20% of women had even tried anything like this. Now we're looking at numbers that suggest this is becoming normalized sexual behavior.
And that rapid change raises some serious questions. Dr. Sarah Chen's research at Columbia looked at this exact phenomenon. She found that media representation, especially mainstream shows like 50 Shades, certain Netflix series, even music videos, normalized BDSM elements in ways that previous generations never experienced.
Yeah, this is wild. So when choking happens, it reduces blood flow and oxygen to the brain, which increases carbon dioxide levels. This creates a lightheaded, euphoric sensation, like a natural high. It triggers dopamine and endorphin release.
It's literally mimicking a drug high. The research showed 82% of women who tried it reported euphoria, and 44% experienced that head rush sensation. It's like your brain is getting a chemical cocktail. Okay, so let's get deeper into the brain chemistry here, because this is just the surface level. There's actually a whole cascade of neurological responses happening simultaneously.
Right, so the initial hypoxia, that's the oxygen restriction, triggers what's called hypoxic euphoria. But simultaneously, you get norepinephrine release from the sympathetic nervous system, which is your body's alarm system going off.
And here's where it gets really interesting from a neuroscience perspective. That combination of reduced oxygen and increased adrenaline creates what researchers call a paradoxical state. Your brain is simultaneously experiencing danger signals and pleasure signals.
The fascinating thing is that Dr. Rebecca Martinez at Stanford did personality profiling of women who seek out this experience. She found some really specific psychological patterns that predict enjoyment of breath play.
Oh, this is that study where they looked at big 5 personality traits, right? Women who scored high in openness to experience and sensation-seeking were like 3 times more likely to enjoy it. But interestingly, anxiety levels didn't predict it at all.
Right, and that's just the first psychological trigger. The second one is power exchange, the whole dominance and submission thing. When there's that controlled vulnerability, it releases oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone.
And this Psychology Today study with 3,000 participants found that 64% of women enjoyed choking for the trust it builds in BDSM-like play. Like, there's this paradox where vulnerability actually makes them feel empowered. 48% specifically mentioned empowerment through vulnerability. But let's dig deeper into that power exchange psychology, because I think people misunderstand what's actually happening there. It's not about wanting to be overpowered or dominated in a general sense.
Exactly. Dr. Patricia Williams' research on consensual power exchange showed that women who enjoy this typically score high on measures of personal agency and control in other areas of life. It's almost like controlled surrender as a form of empowerment. It's counterintuitive, but it makes sense psychologically. It's like controlled danger without actual harm, the forbidden aspect, the surrender to desire. It taps into these deep evolutionary instincts around control and trust.
The third trigger is straight up adrenaline. When your brain perceives danger, even controlled danger, it activates fight or flight, releasing adrenaline, which amplifies arousal. It's like sex becomes this intense, almost animalistic experience.
And women described feeling deeply connected through that vulnerability. It's controlled masochism, basically. But here's where it gets interesting. There are huge age differences in these preferences.
Oh my God, the age data blew my mind. Only 35% of women over 40 enjoy choking compared to 70% under 25. That's like a complete generational divide. What do you think is driving that? You know what, Jake? Let's really break down these age differences because there's so much more to unpack there. That 70% versus 35% split between younger and older women isn't just about porn exposure.
The University of Michigan did this massive longitudinal study tracking sexual preferences across generations. Women who came of age in the 2010s and 2020s reported fundamentally different attitudes towards sexual experimentation compared to Gen X and baby boomer women.
And it's not just age, there are education, geographic, and even economic factors. The data shows higher rates among college-educated women, urban versus rural populations, and interestingly, women in higher stress careers show different patterns too.
Well, here's the thing, and this might be uncomfortable to hear, but 54% of 18 to 24-year-olds said their interest came from porn exposure. So younger generations are literally learning about sex from porn that includes choking.
That's wow. So it's not necessarily that they discover they like it organically. They're seeing it normalized in porn and then trying it. That raises some questions about whether this is authentic preference or learned behavior.
Exactly. And this ties into the consent issues, which we have to talk about, because 22% of women in that Bed Bible survey reported negative experiences due to lack of consent. That's more than 1 in 5.
And get this, another study found that 26.5% of choking incidents were non-consensual. Like, guys just doing it without asking first. That's assault, not kink. There's a massive difference between consensual breath play and just grabbing someone's throat. Jake, I think we need to spend way more time on this safety and consent piece because this is literally life and death stuff. The medical literature has documented cases of accidental death, stroke, and permanent brain injury from breath play gone wrong.
Dr. James Morrison, who's an emergency room physician in Seattle, published a study documenting 47 cases of choking-related injuries in just 1 year at his hospital. And those are just the ones that made it to the ER. Many injuries probably go unreported.
So let's talk about what proper consent and communication actually looks like for this. Because it's not just saying yes once. Sex educators recommend having multiple conversations outside the bedroom before ever trying anything like this.
BDSM educators recommend what they call the PRIC protocol: personal responsibility, informed consent, risk awareness, and kink ethics. For breath play specifically, this means understanding anatomy, establishing clear signals, and having safety plans in place.
And something that doesn't get talked about enough is the psychological aftermath. Even when everything goes right, these experiences can trigger unexpected emotional responses: euphoria, vulnerability, sometimes even crying or emotional overwhelm.
That's where aftercare becomes crucial. The BDSM community has developed really sophisticated protocols around emotional processing after intense experiences. This includes things like cuddling, hydration, checking in emotionally, and debriefing what worked or didn't work.
I want to talk about some red flags that suggest someone should maybe talk to a therapist about their interest in this. If someone feels like they need increasingly dangerous experiences to feel aroused, or if they can't enjoy sex without risk or pain, that might indicate underlying trauma or addiction patterns.
Dr. Lisa Thompson, a trauma-informed sex therapist, distinguishes between exploratory kink and trauma reenactment. Healthy interest comes from curiosity and pleasure seeking, while concerning patterns involve compulsion, self-harm motivations, or inability to feel arousal without danger.
Let's shift to something practical. How do you actually bring this up in a relationship? Because that conversation can be really awkward, especially if you're not sure how your partner will react.
Relationship counselors recommend starting with general conversations about fantasies and boundaries first. Don't just spring, hey, want to try choking on someone? Build up a foundation of sexual communication and trust.
And what if your partner is really not into it? That's totally valid too. Dr. Emily Nagoski talks about sexual compatibility versus sexual flexibility. You can be flexible about trying new things, but you don't have to be compatible with every single kink or preference your partner has.
Before we wrap up, I want to bust some myths about this topic because there's a lot of misinformation out there. Myth number 1, that women who like this have daddy issues or trauma. The research doesn't support that at all.
Myth number 2, that it's always about male dominance and female submission. Actually, studies show that power dynamics in BDSM are often more fluid than people assume. Some women specifically seek out this experience as a form of agency and control.
And myth number 3, that you can make it completely safe with the right techniques. Even BDSM safety experts acknowledge that breath play carries inherent risks that can't be eliminated entirely. Being honest about that is crucial for truly informed consent.
So, let me try to synthesize all of this research and what it means for people listening. We've covered the neurochemistry, the psychology, the demographics, the safety concerns, and the relationship dynamics. What are the key takeaways?
First, that sexual preferences exist on a spectrum, and there's no universal normal. Second, that understanding the psychology behind preferences helps remove shame and judgment. Third, that any sexual practice involving potential physical risk requires extraordinary levels of communication and consent.
And fourth, that cultural and generational shifts in sexuality are happening faster than ever before, which means we need to be having more honest, research-based conversations about these topics instead of just letting people figure it out from porn or social media.
You know, Mia, one thing we haven't talked about is how this varies across different cultures and countries. The research we've been citing is mostly from the U.S., but there are some fascinating international studies that paint a more complex picture.
Oh, this is interesting. I remember reading about that study from the Netherlands that showed much lower rates, like 28% of women compared to our 58% here. And in Japan, the numbers were even lower, around 15%. But the cultural factors there are completely different around discussing sexuality openly.
And that raises questions about whether our American numbers reflect actual preference differences or just cultural differences in sexual expression and reporting. Scandinavian countries, which tend to be more sexually open, actually showed similar patterns to the U.S., but with more emphasis on explicit consent education.
I want to shift to something we haven't really addressed. What happens in long-term relationships where this becomes a regular part of someone's sexual routine? Because the psychological dynamics can actually change over time.
Dr. Amanda Rodriguez at UC Davis did longitudinal research following couples over 3 years. She found that couples who incorporated breath play early in their relationship showed different communication patterns than couples who introduced it later.
What did she find? Because I'm curious about whether couples develop tolerance. Like, do they need more intensity over time? Or does the novelty wear off? Or does it actually strengthen intimacy bonds?
So here's the interesting part. 67% of couples actually reported that incorporating this strengthened their overall communication about sex and boundaries. But about 23% did show escalation patterns where they needed increased intensity over time, which can be a red flag.
Let's talk about what sex therapists and relationship counselors are seeing in their practices, because this is becoming a much more common topic in therapy sessions. Dr. Michael Torres, who specializes in kink-aware therapy, says he's seeing a huge uptick in couples seeking guidance around BDSM elements.
What's interesting is that traditional sex therapy training didn't really cover BDSM or kink elements until recently. Now there's specialized certification programs because therapists were finding that standard approaches didn't address the psychological complexity of consensual power exchange.
The American Association of Sexuality Educators actually developed specific protocols for kink-aware therapy. They distinguish between recreational kink, compulsive kink, and trauma-driven kink. Each requires completely different therapeutic approaches.
If someone listening is struggling with compulsive patterns around this or any kind of risky sexual behavior, the National Coalition for Sexual Freedom maintains a directory of kink-aware professionals. Not all therapists are going to understand this topic without judgment.
Before we continue, I want to talk about the research itself because there are some important limitations to these studies we've been citing. Most sex research suffers from selection bias. People who participate in surveys about controversial topics aren't representative of the general population.
Right, and there's also social desirability bias in the opposite direction. Some women might underreport interest in stigmatized behaviors, while others might overreport to appear sexually adventurous. The methodology matters a lot. Anonymous online surveys versus in-person interviews produce very different results.
Plus, most of these studies skew towards white, college-educated urban participants. Dr. Jennifer Martinez-Lopez at UCLA is doing groundbreaking research on how race, class, and cultural background affect sexual preferences and expression, and the patterns are really different across different communities.
Her preliminary findings suggest that women from more conservative religious backgrounds who do engage in this report different psychological motivations than women from secular backgrounds. And LGBTQ+ women show distinct patterns around power dynamics that don't fit the typical heteronormative models.
Looking forward, there's some fascinating research happening around virtual reality and breath play simulation. Stanford's VR lab is studying whether people can get similar neurochemical responses from simulated danger without actual physical risk.
And there are researchers working on biometric safety devices that could monitor oxygen levels and heart rate during BDSM activities. The idea is to use technology to provide objective safety measurements rather than relying solely on subjective signals.
One thing I think is really important to discuss is comprehensive sex education. Like, should schools be addressing BDSM and kink? Because clearly young people are encountering this content and nobody's teaching them about consent protocols or safety measures.
The Netherlands actually piloted a program that includes consent education around power exchange in their comprehensive sex ed curriculum. Early data suggests it reduces non-consensual incidents and helps young people understand the difference between fantasy, media representation, and real-life practice.
And there are some really good online resources that people should know about. FetLife has extensive educational materials about breath play safety. The BDSM community has developed incredibly detailed protocols because they've had to. There wasn't formal education available elsewhere.
Before we completely wrap up, I want to address some listener questions we've been getting about this topic. Someone asked whether there are certain medical conditions that make breath play more dangerous, and the answer is absolutely yes.
People with heart conditions, blood pressure issues, neurological disorders, or any history of stroke or aneurysm should absolutely not engage in breath play. There are also medications, blood thinners, certain antidepressants, blood pressure medications that can make it much more dangerous.
And never, ever combine breath play with alcohol or drugs. Dr. Morrison's emergency room study found that 34% of the serious injuries involved alcohol use, which impairs judgment and makes it impossible to properly assess safety signals. The combination is potentially lethal.
Another question we got was about warning signs that something is going wrong during breath play. Loss of consciousness is obviously an emergency, but there are earlier warning signs: confusion, slurred speech, loss of coordination, or any change in the person's responsiveness.
If someone passes out during breath play, you need to know basic first aid. Check breathing and pulse, put them in recovery position, and be prepared to call 911. Don't be embarrassed about explaining what happened to medical professionals. Their job is to help, not judge.
We also got questions about couples who are having disagreements or pressure around this topic. If one partner is really interested and the other isn't, or if there are safety concerns, couples therapy with a kink-aware therapist can be incredibly helpful for navigating these conversations.
Remember that healthy relationships should never involve coercion around any sexual activity, especially something with physical risks. If someone is pressuring you to try breath play or making you feel bad for not wanting to, that's a red flag about the relationship itself, not just the sexual activity.
For people who want to learn more about this safely, beyond just Googling, there are some really good books. Screw the Roses, Send Me the Thorns is a classic BDSM guide, and the new Topping book and the new Bottoming book cover power exchange psychology really well.
The National Coalition for Sexual Freedom I mentioned earlier also has educational resources and can connect you with local BDSM education groups. Many major cities have munch groups, social meetups for people interested in kink where you can learn about safety without any sexual activity happening.
So, to bring everything full circle, we've covered a lot of ground today. We talked about the surprising prevalence of interest in breath play, the complex neurochemistry and psychology behind it, the huge generational and cultural differences, the serious safety and consent considerations, and how to navigate this topic in relationships.
The main things to remember are sexual preferences are complex and personal. Understanding the psychology helps reduce shame and judgment. Safety and consent require way more than just saying yes, and cultural shifts in sexuality are happening faster than our educational systems can keep up with.
Most importantly, whether you're interested in this or not, whether your partner is or isn't, the key is honest communication, respect for boundaries, and prioritizing safety over everything else. There's no sexual activity that's worth risking someone's health or life, no matter how pleasurable it might be.
Actually, before we sign off, let me add one more thing. We've been getting messages from people asking about how to support friends or partners who've had negative experiences with breath play. If someone you care about has been hurt or traumatized by non-consensual choking, here's how you can help.
First, believe them and don't minimize their experience. Don't ask why they didn't speak up sooner or question their choices. Trauma responses are complex and not logical. Help them access professional support. RAIN has a hotline, and many areas have trauma-informed therapists who specialize in sexual violence. Most importantly, let them control the pace of recovery and don't push them to get over it quickly.
Right, and this is where the porn influence becomes really problematic. Young men are seeing this in porn and assuming it's just normal to do, without understanding that real BDSM requires negotiation, safe words, and aftercare.
And let's be clear, even with consent, this isn't risk-free. The research mentions potential brain changes, injury risks. It's not like other kinks where the worst case is embarrassment. This can actually cause physical harm.
The physiological stuff is no joke. It's literally restricting blood flow to the brain by stimulating the carotid artery. Even experts who study this say there's no entirely safe way to do it, even with precautions.
But I think what's important to understand is, for the women who do genuinely enjoy this consensually, it's not about self-harm or low self-worth. It's about specific neurochemical and psychological triggers that create pleasure.
Yeah, the research shows it's about neurochemical rewards, the dopamine, the oxytocin, emotional intimacy through trust, and sensory amplification from the adrenaline rush. It's complex psychology, not just, being damaged or whatever.
Though some critics do argue that some of this enjoyment might stem from internalized guilt or masochism, where pain punishes for sexual desire. Like some psychological posts mention that connection. It's complicated.
True, and we should mention that the data might have some bias too. These surveys often attract people who are already sexually adventurous or have strong opinions. The real numbers might be different.
But even accounting for that, we're talking about millions of women who genuinely enjoy this. The key takeaway is, it's not weird or wrong if you like it, but communication and consent are absolutely non-negotiable.
And if you don't like it, that's completely normal too. The data shows it varies hugely by individual, age, experience. There's no right or wrong preference, just be safe and consensual about whatever you're into.
Exactly. So whether you're curious about this or just wanted to understand the psychology, the main thing is it's some women, not all women. It requires serious communication, and there are real risks involved.